This is U.S. history. In case you forgot what class you were in, we're in Chapter 22, The World at War, 1939 to 1945. You should have turned in now your Week 3 packet. That should include everything from Chapter 21, including the test. Hopefully you were able to get all of that taken care of. We're going to begin today with Chapter 22, first video of Week 4. If you could turn in your books, please, to page 491. I'm going to start reading the intro paragraphs to you, and then we'll move on from there. It's a long one down to around the 3-yard line. The radio announcer's voice crackled across the airwaves. The New York Giants, the champs of the National Football League's Eastern Division, were getting a surprise beating from the Brooklyn Dodgers at the Polo Grounds in New York. Ward Cuts takes it. Coming up to his left, he's over the 10. Nice block by Lehman's. Cuffs still going. Listeners across the country edged up in their seats. He's up to the 25, and now he's hit hard about the 27-yard line. Bruiser Kennard made the 10. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The announcement on that Sunday afternoon of December 7th, 1941, did more than interrupt a football game. It shattered America's uneasy peace. The nation had been plunged into the largest, costliest war in history. Isolation was over. The heroic effort to liberate the Pacific from the Japanese military leaders and Europe from Hitler and Mussolini was soon underway. The global conflict changed the face of the world for the rest of the century and gave America a superpower role in that new world. In 1932, Hitler, a powerful and provocative speaker, told a mass rally, "I cast my eyes back to the time when with 6 other unknown men I founded the Nazi Party. When I spoke before 11, 12, 13, 14, 20, 30, 50 persons. When I recall how after a year I had won 64 members of the movement, I must confess that which has today been created, when a stream of millions is flowing into our movement, represents something unique in German history." With that in mind, how in the world did the German nation allow itself to follow a man like Hitler? Well, Hitler made Germany sound special. He made them unique. He gave them purpose and a desire to join something growing. Next question that might be asked is, could something like this happen again in the U.S.? I think the answer is definitely possibility. If people are more willing to give up freedoms for safety and security or to be a part of a greater whole, then maybe something like that could happen again. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but it could happen. Let's get started. Roman numeral 1, a time of tyrants. Letter A, clouds on the horizon. Let's begin with Germany. Adolf Hitler. In 1923, a World War I veteran named Adolf Hitler sought to overthrow the government. The coup failed, and he was thrown into prison. While in prison, he wrote a book called Mein Kampf. The Mein Kampf means my struggles. It was a book he wrote. Although sentenced to prison for several years, he was released after 1 year. He formed what became known as the Nazi Party, a political party in Germany called the Nazi Party. In 1933, he was elected Chancellor of Germany, but he made himself a dictator. The word Führer means leader, and he became the Führer of Germany. He described his new nation as the Third Reich, a German empire that would last 1,000 years. Hitler cautiously moved forward as he gained more power. He urged the people in favor of blind patriotism, anti-Jewish feelings, and a totalitarian government with an increased military. All of this done with the World War I allies doing nothing. Number 2, Italy and Benito Mussolini. His movement was called fascism. It was a nationalistic, militaristic, and totalitarian mass movement. Basically, if you think of Nazism and fascism as the same thing, just in different countries, that also works for me. The philosophy of fascism is perhaps best summed up by one of the first leaders of the movement who said, "Deny everything, destroy everything, in order to renew everything from the foundations." In short, Mussolini promised the Italians that he would restore the glory of the Roman Empire within himself as Caesar. He established himself as the Il Duce, that's a capital I, lowercase l, Il Duce, which means leader of Italy. And he invaded Ethiopia. In order to gain power and prestige, Mussolini decided to invade the independent African country of Ethiopia. The Ethiopians fought bravely against the tanks and machine guns with spears and stones, but were defeated. When the League of Nations tried to place sanctions on Italy in complaint, the Italian delegates walked out. Shortly thereafter, Italy made an alliance with Germany. In your books, please read the tan box on page 492 entitled Fascism. Read that to yourself. Once we have finished, please unpause the video and we'll continue. Number 3, Japan, military leaders. Hideki Tojo, who you see pictured on your right, and Emperor Hirohito. Tojo was the leader of Japanese warlords who gained control of the country. Having arrived late in world influence, they sought to expand their power in the Pacific. Emperor Hirohito's involvement is questionable. Some historians claim he was heavily involved in military decisions. Others claim his role was limited, that he was more of a figurehead. Your own research is your own opinion. One thing Japan did do was invade Manchuria. Manchuria at the time belonged to China. You can see its location on the map on the screen. In 1931, Japan annexed the region of Manchuria, northeastern China. Then again, in 1937, Japan declared war on China again. That war would continue until 1945. Because little action was taken by the U.S. or anyone, Japan was allowed to continue to grow in power. The result was the formation of the Axis nations. It was an alliance consisting of Germany, Italy, and Japan. Number 4, the Soviet Union and the leader Joseph Stalin. The Bolshevik Revolution during World War I had taken it out of the war and turned it into a communist nation. Shortly thereafter, Stalin rose to power to become its dictator. He promoted two things, communism and collectivization. Stalin was not a fascist like Hitler and Mussolini. He was a communist. The difference is that fascism allows people to still own their businesses, but regulates them heavily. In communism, and this is probably the best definition, the government takes control of all businesses. Collectivization's definition is when the government seized all private land and crops. An estimated 10 to 20 million Russians died under Stalin's rule, but he didn't mind. His thoughts were this: a single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic. Stalin would find a companion thinker in Adolf Hitler. Letter B, the coming of war. Hitler wasn't a skilled diplomat or even a military genius, but he was a master politician, able to size up his opponents, predict their responses, and outmaneuver them. Hitler was able to gain control of large sections of Europe without a fight, even because he said he was only regaining lands lost to Germany from World War I. Number 1, early successes. Rather than standing up to Hitler, the West sought to appease him. Appeasement means to satisfy, in this case, Hitler's demands. To satisfy Hitler's demands. Instead, it only whetted Hitler's appetite for more territory. First thing he did was he sought to remilitarize the Rhineland. The Rhineland was the German industrial territory next to France. On this map, you can see it located in this pink area here. Technically, it belonged to Germany, but it wasn't allowed to have any troops in it, according to the World War I treaties. Germany decided to move in anyways. The League of Nations filed all of the complaints possible, but nothing was done about it. Next thing that happened was the Anschluss with Austria. The word Anschluss means unification of Germany and Austria. Hitler, an Austrian himself, wanted to join the two nations into one. Again, the World War I treaties had specifically forbidden it. An Austrian Nazi coup occurred, and the nation, quote-unquote, invited the Germans in. Hitler naturally accepted the invitation as the West continued to do nothing. So now you see Austria's been taken over. Number 2, Munich. Czechoslovakia was next on Hitler's menu. The Sudetenland is the region that you see on the map that's in the pink area. That is a part of Czechoslovakia. It was a predominantly German area in western Czechoslovakia. Hitler claimed that this 250,000 German people belonged to Germany. In reality, these Germans had fled the country when Hitler's reign began. The Czechs appealed to Britain and France and all met at Munich to talk it out. The end result, the conference at Munich, promised peace for our time. Hitler threatened war, and France and Britain gave in to Hitler's wishes. Hitler promised this was his last acquisition. Yeah, right. Neville Chamberlain, who is the Prime Minister of Britain, he's the man pictured next to Hitler on that picture, believed that the meeting at Munich had succeeded in creating peace for our time. Chamberlain overestimated his charm in personally dealing with Hitler. He confided in a letter to his sister, "Hitler definitely liked me and thought he could do business with me." Historian William Manchester commented acidly, "This was true in the sense that an armed robber thinks he can do business with a bank teller." Churchill, one of the few who opposed this conference, declared, "The German dictator, instead of snatching his victuals from the table, has been content to have them served to him course by course." In the end, Hitler will take over all of Czechoslovakia. Hitler broke his promise when he took possession of all of Czechoslovakia. The Czechs again asked for help, but none came. This betrayal by Hitler forced the British and French to sign security agreements with Romania and Poland in hopes of stopping Hitler's continual takeover. Number 3, Tyrants Pray. In order to expand further eastward, Hitler had to comfort Stalin first. To satisfy Stalin, Hitler offered Stalin a piece of the pie in Eastern Europe. Stalin agreed. The pact was based on no mutual trust, but like vultures feeding on a carcass, the tyrants' mouths were too full of flesh to be concerned with devouring each other. It was known as the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. This was an agreement that Hitler and Stalin would divide and conquer Eastern Europe between themselves and not fight one another. With the agreement signed with the Soviet Union and Hitler's opinion of Britain and France very low, he planned to invade Poland next. And so, on September 1st, 1939, on a very testable date, Germany's invasion of Poland begins World War II. 56 German divisions rolled across the border while 1,600 aircraft bombed Polish targets. This whole movement was known as a Blitzkrieg. The joke there, Blitzkrieg, when you only stop for kittens. Oh, cute kitty. No, actually, the definition of Blitzkrieg means lightning war, and it describes Germany's quick and sudden offensive. In 2 days, the Polish defenders had suffered 100,000 casualties. By the end of the month, Hitler's conquest was complete. By the end of the war, over 6 million Poles would be killed, half of them Jews. On September 3rd, Chamberlain reluctantly led Britain to declare war. France, dragging its feet, also joined in. While these hesitant allies tried to do as little as they could, the initiative was left to Hitler. That's all we're going to cover for today. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Be good, do good. Bye.